One of the other reasons why I knew this would be the sort of second bonnet is I had lots of trouble where I had to fill this hole in originally, because there was basically a hole there where the carburetor or the air filter used to stick through when it was a Pinto. I kept getting this cracking or these sort of whisper lines that would come up, so I put quite a lot of lacquer on it, hoping that when I flatten this down that will disappear more than it is. Likewise, when I had to fill in the area where I originally had a nice big hole here for the exhaust to come out, I kept on getting some small whisper lines here, and as you can see, I was getting these air holes that come up. I think this is something that happens when you put the paint on too quickly and don't allow it enough time to dry. So this is not so much a hole in the actual filler, it's actually where these gas holes sort of appear in the base coat. Not always at the times where you want them to, we can catch them. So yeah, this is why this one's always going to be the sort of the spare bonnet, because it's not as come out as nice as the other one, but it should still do a trick if I need it. Right, I've got a nice clean bucket of water. I've got a sort of soft pad. It's actually part of one of those sort of kneading pads you'd use in your garage. Just cut a section out that I can wrap some various papers around it. 1500 wet and dry is what I start with initially. I'm going to probably, as I said earlier on, do half of it. So I'll probably do the whole lot of here in 1500. Then mask off the end and then do 2000 and the various stages. So let's see how we get on. So I've just done a few minutes with the 1500 grit. Don't want to teach you how to suck eggs, but just to go through it in case someone hasn't come across it before. Obviously the orange peel is effectively looking at sort of mountain tops and valleys. Obviously you see as the lacquer or the paint goes on, it doesn't always go in smooth, so you don't get a nice good reflection through the paintwork. So all I've done is you can see where some of the areas are flatted, which is obviously where I've taken a few tops off, and some of the areas are still shiny, which is obviously the valleys. So the intention is to carry on doing it until you get it all nice and as flat as you can. So it's all gone down to like the matted finish. You obviously see areas where you've done more than others. So that's taken me probably about 5 minutes worth of rubbing to get it down to that level. That's this area with the 1500. Obviously the whole bonnet in 1500 will take quite a while, and then the same with the 2000 and the various polishing bits. This bit I haven't done at all. I'm going to leave it so you can see how it was from the start, and hopefully you see the stages as we go through. Just a bit more information that I just remembered. The white residue you're taking off is obviously just the lacquer. So this has had, just to remind you, it's had a primer, a base coat which is your colour but without any lacquer in it. Obviously build it up in stages, and it's had a few coats of the lacquer, which is what I intend to rub down into the lacquer. Obviously you've got to keep an eye out. Should any of this stuff turn to be in the blue or whatever your base coat is, that's showing you've gone through your lacquer and you're actually rubbing down your base coat. So you would need to stop straight away and reassess whether we need to put any more base coat back on before re-lacquering again. So just keep an eye out for that if you're rubbing down. The white stuff's okay, the colour stuff isn't. If you're using a paint that's got lacquer inside it, obviously it's a different situation whereby you will be taking some of the colour off at the same time. So maybe about another 20 minutes of work and flipping the paper over a couple of times just to try and make sure I'm always got a good bit of grit on it. I've managed to take virtually all the orange peel off of there. There's a couple more bits still here which you could carry on with, but obviously although you'll be rubbing down those bits, you'll also be rubbing down the rest of the area, and therefore you're reducing the amount of lacquer you got on that bit. So you've got to be a bit considerate about how far you go, because you don't want to end up reducing the lacquer so much at this stage that when you come down to the polishing stage there's virtually nothing left. So you've obviously got a bit of play it by ear as to how far you want to go, but I reckon just a few little speckles I've got here are pretty good. I'm going to carry away along, see how I get on. Right, it has taken me about 2 hours to get what I've done so far achieved. Obviously I've been using the paper with the pad in various different places to try and get as much use out of all of the paper as I can do. Obviously you use a pad to even out the pressure on the as you're rubbing. You don't really want the sort of pressure where your fingers are going, obviously there'll be grooves everywhere, so this just flattens it all out. So yeah, so far I've managed to do from obviously the blue line down to here. I've got to do quite a lot of work I had to do on this edge here where the original tape mark was, to get rid of all the little shiny bits. There's just a little bit more to do on this bit here. But yeah, 2 hours in so far, 1500 is all completely done. I'll carry on later on. The first stage is probably the most dramatic stage because obviously you've done the front to back, taking all the shine off that was on there by doing the 1500. Obviously as you do the 2000s and start doing the polishing stages, the change is less dramatic. So particularly when you do the next stage of 2000, I'm going to have to remember how much I've actually done, because you can see the change on this as you're doing it, and you can't see such a dramatic change when you're doing the 2000s and maybe the 3000s of the wet and dry. So you have to be quite religious on how much time you spend doing each section before moving on, and not so much on the actual change in the removal of the top coat of the lacquer. Right, I've been out here for about another hour. I basically put a piece of tape down and did the rest of this area from there to the end in 2000. Did the same again, bit more tape down, then done all this in 3000. So I'm about to start doing the buffing section. Obviously I've whacked another piece of tape down now, so the intention is to try and do the 3 stages of the buffing and then obviously take the tape off later on and just see the various stages from not touched with loads of orange peel, hopefully down to a nice polished bit down the other end. So you might have seen me use the buffer before when I was doing the other panels. Obviously I went out and bought a buffer specifically for this. It's about £60, so it's a pretty cheap one. Variable speed, so I only use it on the slow speed anyway because I'm still a bit nervous about using it for various reasons. Obviously I use a 3M product, so I bought this pack of 3D compounds to do the whole car. So the sort of Lotus 7 type car that I've got, I managed to use virtually all of the green up already, and still got a bit of the others. Again, the green's the one you use obviously first of all, then yellow and the blue, and you do most of the work initially with the green. So you can get them in various sizes, so I have already got another pot of the green if needed. And you usually start with a nice quite hard pad first of all, and then you go on to what's known as a waffle pad for the other two, obviously as you work through to getting a nice polish on it. The machine itself is a polisher down here, which I will do a little bit of video in a little while. You have got to be particularly careful. It rotates clockwise from above, and so you've got to be careful that when you go to the end of a panel, you come off the panel like that, but you've got to be very careful that you don't go onto a panel again, that sort of angle, otherwise you're likely to break off the end of the materials. Likewise, you've got to make sure you don't do it that way. You'd obviously do it from the other way, coming down rather than going up. I'll demonstrate that in a minute. So yeah, I'm going to have a go at the starting off with the green, do the whole lot and then work your way from there. So see you in a minute. As I said earlier on, so start off with the green pad. It's a variable speed machine. Obviously you want a 10 as you imagine. I tend to only use it on about maybe 2.5. So that's the maximum speed I'm normally going to get up to. Obviously these are just velcroed on as you imagine. Normally put a few little dabs of the material on the pad. Some people will put it on the machine, some people put it on the bodywork, depends what your favourite is. You will sometimes get quite a lot of it flying off, so a lot of people just prefer to sort of put it on there first of all rather than just, literally if you put it on here and you turn it on, it can just fly off everywhere. So depends what you fancy doing, but I normally put a little bit on both, and then I'm going to try and do the whole panel. Normally I could do a couple of sweeps of them, clean it all off and do a second go, and then obviously change pad, change material and carry on from there.